Okay, we're gonna jump right in, and if some people are still joining, that's totally fine. We are recording, so we'll send it out afterwards for everyone that was here or joining a little late or is watching this after. So good afternoon and welcome everyone. Thanks for joining us today. If you are expecting a webinar called Building the Plane, How Vista Village Used TORSH Talent to Transform Early Head Start and Home Visiting Coaching, you are in the right place. And I'm going to go ahead and do quick introductions for your team today. So I am Jamie Paulson. I am the Director of Marketing for TORSH. I taught in public schools for 5 years before teaching and directing Head Start for 2 years. And then I've spent a lot of time in the ed tech world, primarily focused on ed tech startups. And I landed at TORSH because it seemed like the perfect mix for coaching, development, early childhood education, all of the work that I really love, and still working to impact educators and students. And then I'm going to let Monica Rollins introduce herself.
Hi, everyone. My name is Monica Rollins, and my pronouns are she, her. I have been in the early childhood field for about 20 years, and I've worked in a variety of different capacities in children's museums and after-school programs, preschools, university teaching, you name it, I've probably done it. And now I'm currently the education manager at an early Head Start program called Vista Village, and we serve families and children under the age of 4 throughout LA County. And I'm really happy to be here. Thanks to Jamie for inviting me to talk about this juicy topic.
Yes, this is the highlight of my month, is being able to ask you all kinds of questions. So all right. Well, if we can go to the next slide, I'll tell you a little bit about TORSH. Everyone might be familiar with us as a platform, but if you're not, we're excited to dive into how TORSH is helping educators and coaches strengthen their professional development journeys today and make a real difference in classrooms. So at TORSH, we're all about creating tools that make professional development more actionable, more measurable, and impactful, so educators and students can thrive. Our platform is called TORSH Talent, and it's packed with features designed to meet the needs of education professionals specifically. So we have strengths and needs surveys that help pinpoint your focus areas and what your team is working on or needs to work on. We have time-stamped video coaching with feedback for practical and real-time reflection. We have goal-setting tools that help you to track progress with your team and celebrate success. Everything we do is just about making coaching meaningful and effective. We also know that data is important in this field and many others, so we've built in robust reporting tools to give you insights along the way to measure progress and make informed decisions. Plus, we have features like self-assessment and observations to foster that continuous growth and have everyone be able to measure where they're at. Our Coach the Coach tools, we support those who guide others. We build stronger networks of professional growth. We allow for collaboration, all of that within the platform. So today we'll be focusing on how all of those tools together in the platform are making a difference for educators and communities like Vista Village. We're going to share some ideas. We're going to ask a ton of questions of Monica and let her tell you about her experience using the platform, and explore how TORSH can support your work in lots of ways. So let's get started. Let's go back one more, Shelby, to understanding the practice-based coaching, just because I want to start this off with a question from Monica, which is, Monica, we know that you're a professional, you're coaching, education. Can you give us just a brief tutorial or introduction to practice-based coaching, what it is, in case somebody is not familiar?
Sure. So if any of you are on this call and you work in the Head Start space, one of our performance standards, so the guidelines that are kind of set by Congress that each Head Start program has to align with, one of them is that we have to provide proof that we are using an evidence-based coaching model in order to support the professional growth and development of our education staff. And so that goes for any Head Start or early Head Start program. And we at Vista Village are using the coaching framework called practice-based coaching, otherwise known as PBC. And at the center of this framework is we're really trying to strive for effective teaching practices, or in the case of if you run a program that partners with family childcare providers or with home visitors, we're really centering effective practices for any type of education folks that work with children and families. And while we center those effective teaching practices, it's also held in this container of a collaborative partnership. So we understand that no learning or no improving of skills can happen outside of the scope of a partnership and that reciprocal trust that's built between a coach and a coachee. And there's three elements to the PBC structure, which is shared goals and action planning. And so once the collaborative partnership is established, it's really easy to go in and kind of assess the needs and strengths of the coachee, and you do that in a reciprocal way. And then you come together to co-create one goal and maybe a handful of action steps. And that is considered an action plan. And then that way you have a clear sense, a clear kind of like a GPS map of where to go and what you'll accomplish at that final destination. It also involves this really focused, targeted observation piece. And then once the focused observation of the coach really observing that goal being put into practice, there's also this reflective and this feedback piece where the coach kind of holds a conversation, frames a conversation to really reflect on how the journey towards accomplishing the goal has been, what worked, what didn't, how did the families or the children respond to working towards that goal. And so it is a cyclical process. And at Vista Village, what we do is we work with a home visitor or a family childcare provider for a total of 3 months. And each cycle is about 6 weeks. So we're able to do about 2 to 3 cycles with each education team member.
I don't know if
answer the question?
Yeah, that was wonderful. I don't know if I've ever heard the description so accurate, like the GPS location, like it gives you very specific instructions. That was great.
Thanks.
Great. Perfect. And so I probably asked that before. Can you tell us a little bit about your role at Vista Village and more about the program in general?
Sure. So I've been with Vista Village for about 4 years, a little over 4 years. And before I came on, there was no education manager. And so it was all the things that are related under the education umbrella, like coaching, curriculum, looking at high quality environments. All of those pieces were just kind of like scattered about. And then I was able to kind of come in and put like a real microscope on all of those different pieces of our program. And what I discovered is that we did need to kind of come in and like refine and clean up some of our processes and systems around coaching. And the reason why I love systems and processes around this topic is because we partner with family childcare providers who are independent contractors. They run their own daycare businesses, and they partner with us so we can really help professionalize and kind of go on this journey with them to increase the quality of the services that they provide. In addition, we also have a home visit team as well, and we are now fully staffed with 11 home visitors, and we work with the home visitors as well to help, up level their skills and their home visiting practices, so that we're really striving for that high quality of care when the home visitors go into the family's homes. And like I mentioned before, we serve about 200-ish clients throughout all of LA County. Anywhere, if you're familiar with LA, we go all the way from Venice to Eagle Rock, and then from East Hollywood down to South LA. So we really run the gamut in terms of the diversity of our families. And what's really exciting is we are now in this really privileged position to open up a center, an infant and toddler center in our main campus. And that's going to really open up more opportunities for us to serve different families and also to offer this different program option. So we'll be running a center, a home-based home visiting program, and a partnership with family childcare providers. And so we're hoping to break ground on the center, I would say within the next year or so.
Which is super exciting. That's very exciting.
So much more coaching to be done.
Yeah. And so of course, as soon as Monica told me about this, coming into a new role, and there was no pre-existing education manager and kind of a lack of processes, perfect title for the webinar, because I've heard that term so many times, building the plane as you're flying it. So I'm sure everybody can relate. But okay, so a little bit more of the backstory. We know what we're going to be talking about today. But Monica, what happened in 2020 that led you to find TORSH?
Well, I feel like 2020 is like, I don't know, it's like a bad word now.
It is.
I don't know about you all, but sometimes I hear about 2020 and COVID and like my shoulders just immediately tense up. And it's kind of like really neat, any of you all who are on this call and were doing this work in early childhood during the pandemic knows that it was a highly traumatizing and just intense time for all of us. And so I really do want to name and acknowledge that. I think we were all kind of, like Jamie said, we were building the plane as we were flying. And that's never like a nice place to be in. And I think we were all just doing the best that we could with what we had. And so one of the things that I discovered was that, even though we were in COVID and our family childcare providers, they were considered essential workers, so they had to stay open and really like fight through any of the hard times of working through this like deadly virus, especially that were impacting those really marginalized communities and the demographics that we actually serve that were disproportionately affected by that. But we still needed to run our program, and the feds and the state who fund our program, they still wanted us to go out there and maintain our coaching program to ensure that we just had eyeballs on the family childcare settings, and that we were ensuring that health and safety was still up to par, and that children were still learning as much as they could if they were coming into the daycares. We were also in this weird place of like having to learn technology, and our family childcare providers are also very diverse in terms of age, ethnicity, language needs, and also like technology comfortability. And so kudos to our family childcare providers, because they also had to like really pivot during these crazy times. And they learned Zoom, and we learned all these different features on Zoom, and some were doing like virtual classes and virtual lessons, individualized for each child several times a week. It was a lot to manage. And we knew that we still, even though we were not going in directly to have like boots on the ground, we still needed that two-way communication to get eyeballs on the daycares themselves. And one of my coaches in my program and I, we were doing a lot of research to figure out what is a good video platform that we could use in order to follow like HIPAA compliant video exchanges, so that, you know, when we're exchanging videos of families and children, like we need to ensure that it's encrypted and that it's secure. And I felt kind of funny about like exchanging videos through text messages or on WhatsApp. And so after researching a bunch of programs, we landed on TORSH Talent. And here we are today.
Here we are. All of that time summed up in just
Yeah.
that.
2 minutes.
Yeah. Awesome. Okay, so let's talk a little bit more about virtual coaching and interacting with small children and their families during that time. How did your team first adjust to working with toddlers and families over Zoom? We know that couldn't have been easy. So they have to learn Zoom, and then they have to actually figure out, like, what are we gonna do?
It was so tricky. I think some of the family childcare providers and home visitors really took to it and have a very innovative sort of like entrepreneurial spirit in that sense of like, okay, we're just going to throw a bunch of spaghetti at the wall and see what sticks. Um, and then others, I think, were just a little bit more apprehensive just with technology in general. And then to really drill that down and to like learn a tool itself, like TORSH, with, you know, all of its different features. And I mean, I'm not joking, but some of our family childcare providers, they barely knew how to like log into their emails, much less navigate this whole platform. And the same thing for our staff at Vista Village. I think technology just in general was a huge learning curve. And I think for some of our coaches, it took a little while to get comfortable in the virtual coaching space. And I knew from like a person that saw like the big picture, but also the day-to-day granular stuff, that I needed to get my coaches really comfortable so that they could go in and model for the family childcare providers and the home visitors how to use these different technology tools and platforms in bite-sized pieces. I think that if I could go back and do it all over again, I think we would have rolled it out in a more kind of intentional way, because I think, you know, we were just in survival mode back then. And I just knew that I had to get something off the ground. And it was a little haphazard in the beginning. So that was like a big challenge. But now I feel like we're in a really good place. The TORSH team and I, like, we've really been collaborating over these past couple of years. And I think we've gotten to a really good place, but it was a huge learning curve in the beginning for sure.
And how did you approach integrating TORSH into your coaching workflows specifically for home visiting and family childcare providers?
So I will say that when I first kind of held up the microscope to our coaching processes, our home-based program and our home-based coach, who coached all the home visitors, was a lot further along with their systems. And so she and I kind of worked together to use the same systems and processes across both programs. And that felt very grounding for me. But ultimately, it was really easy because we already had this framework. At the beginning, I discussed, you know, the framework for practice-based coaching. And so in my head, it made sense to integrate TORSH Talent into this framework. It really worked very how do I say this word? I can't even say it, but you know, like it was
in my head.
it was a very synchronous, I don't know, I think I just made up a word, but it made
Perfect.
sense to me. Like there's different features in the TORSH Talent platform that really lend itself nicely to practice-based coaching. So for instance, for the shared goals and action planning component of the framework, there's the goals feature in TORSH Talent. Obviously for the focused observation and to like really see the coachees in action, practicing their goals. There's that, you know, secure HIPAA compliant video exchange, upload, sharing directly into the TORSH Talent platform. And in terms of like the reflective feedback, there's the time-stamped feedback or the summary feedback feature that allows for, you know, an online virtual conversation around reflection and feedback. And so that's kind of where we got started. We started kind of simple, just using, first we actually rolled out just using how to record a video, how to upload the video to the platform, and then how to share it with the coach. And then the coach was able to provide that real-time feedback using the timestamped or summary feature. And then we slowly started to integrate the goals feature. And that all of that was still, again, like haphazard, but now since we have been working so consistently with the TORSH team, we've kind of created a more customized approach to creating a more comprehensive coaching experience for both the coach and the coachee. And in doing so, it really allows us to, in a more organized way, collect data so we can report back to the feds or to funders or to donors, and also for our own professional development organizing. So what I love about the TORSH platform and the team is that it is very customizable and very individualized to meet our needs. And we're just kind of starting out on that journey, but already the outcomes that I've seen in the past few months have been amazing. And I can't wait to dive more into some of that today.
Perfect. Okay, so swapping gears a little bit, can you speak to how TORSH has supported the requirement for continuous quality improvement within your early Head Start program, particularly when it comes to documenting and tracking progress with home visitors and early childhood providers?
Yeah. So one of the things that we have to track well, we don't have to track, but I think it's just nice to get a sense of, no matter who is going through the coaching process, to kind of see what are the trends and patterns that we see in terms of what types of goals are being created and ultimately mastered or achieved. And so if we start to see over the course of a couple of years, like, oh, we're really noticing that home visitors are working on how to integrate the use of found objects at home or things that are found in the home environment to do developmental activities around. Then that way we can really tailor our entire professional development system around that. So the home visitors will have already gone through some coaching cycles around setting goals with that particular target in mind. And then we can also wrap around the home visitors to create more group workshop experiences, or maybe sending folks to conferences that specifically look at those different topics related to the goals that have been set. Another example is we just actually rolled out using a customized data form, which is another feature in the TORSH Talent platform. We rolled out this environment, well, it's not really an environment. It's a quality improvement assessment tool called the HOVRS, or the HOVRS stands for Home Visiting Rating Scale. And so what that is, it's an assessment to essentially look at and evaluate home visitors' strengths and needs in terms of their home visiting practices. And so we digitized that assessment in TORSH Talent. And during the month of October, all of the home visitors on our team were required to focus in on one home visit that they had, and then do their own self-assessment using that home visiting rating scale. And then the next phase of that is in February, to have the supervisors do that same assessment. So it's like they're doing their own self-reflection and assessment. And then a few months later, once they've been more familiarized with the scale, then the supervisors will come and have a more objective lens to really look at an entire home visit and rate them accordingly. And then we'll have what we're going to do with that information is create our whole entire training and technical assistance plan for the following program year based on these scores. So it's very exciting. And we've already been able to aggregate some of the data. Some of the trends and patterns that we're seeing are very interesting. So we're really excited to continue with that quality improvement plan and see where the next data set kind of takes us.
Yeah. And I think, Shelby, if we can go to the next slide, I wanted to kind of excuse the saying, this one more, double click into the HOVRS scale that we're talking about here. So this was, Monica shared this with us, just a little bit more information, kind of seeing it in the platform. So Monica, what are we looking at here? And how has this been received so far? And what's the impact been?
So full disclosure, November was and is our like data aggregation month. And so we haven't really done much with the data yet. We've just done some preliminary kind of observing.
But you built this, right? This was
Yes. So this is a custom report using the custom report builder that is embedded directly into the TORSH Talent platform. And so what's really cool is you can kind of you can basically build your own reports based on the data that has been collected from either like the goals feature or any other data form that you've customized and created directly into the platform. And so what we're looking at with this specific report is we're looking at the home visitor or the HOVRS outcomes based on the subscale averages, and it's by the user role. So you can actually see the name of the report in the top left corner. I just named it so I can go back to it another time and re-customize it. But the users are each of the home visitors. And then the data form that we're using is the HOVRS that's in the template name column. And then you'll see that under where it says home visit rating scales 3, they're broken down in the columns by each of the subscales that looks at different aspects, like a more broad strokes of what are the main skill sets that home visitors should be implementing. And so under each of those subscales, there's a series of like 7, I would say like 5 to maybe 7 or 8 indicators of what that would look like in practice. And then the home visitors will, for this round, they rated themselves, and it's on a 7-point scale. So the idea is that each subscale, like we would like to see each subscale hit a 5 or above in order to see, like that's what the goal is. We know that there's some high quality home visiting practices happening if there is a 5 or above. And this is an evidence-based assessment tool. And so if we're using it to fidelity, we understand that what's coming from these outcomes is rooted in evidence. And again, you can kind of see across the board, like some home visitors really like rated themselves really high. Some home visitors were a little bit more humble, so to speak. And so it's interesting just to see the broad range, but ultimately in each of these columns, we'd like to see a 5 or above. And to be honest, like some of these home visitors have been around for many, many years. And so I think that they were just being like brutally honest and humble with themselves. And so I don't imagine that if a more objective person came in and rated them, I wouldn't be surprised if the scores would actually go up a little bit, because I can already tell based on knowing each of these home visitors that some were more hard on themselves than others. But yeah, so it'll be interesting to see in February when we generate this report again to see what the, like how this matches up with how their supervisors rate them.
Yeah, I'm definitely one of those people that always rates myself
Yeah.
much harder. And then my coach comes in and has a different opinion. But that's great that you need that outside perspective.
Yeah, and so also, sorry to interrupt, but
Yeah.
one of the ways that we're going to use this data is we're going to, so each November and then also each February, March, we're going to use data that comes from these customized assessment tools that are digitized to determine who is going to enter a practice-based coaching cycle. And so whoever has the lowest overall score, we're not doing it from a punitive lens. We're looking to see like who has the most room to grow, who has like the highest growth edges based on their lower scores. And so then the home visitor coach is going to work with the home visitor with some of the lowest scores to really target in like what are the areas where the home visitor thinks that they really need to grow in or work on, and then create a goal and an action plan around that based on the scores from the HOVRS. And so that's kind of the cycle that we're going to get into. And so probably in January, we're going to get started with that. So the home visitor coach, and then one of these home visitors is going to enter into the first practice-based coaching cycle based on these assessment scores.
Hmm. And we had kind of just you and I off all about, there's basic program requirements that you have to meet. And of course, 2020, everybody was building the plane as we're flying it. So after we came through that and you've actually had a chance to say, I know that we're going to do some above and beyond things. I want to spend some time creating something that I know is going to be impactful, which is where this came from. It took you some time. You've mentioned the importance of setting goals with your team. Could you walk us through an example of how TORSH has helped you to create and monitor goals in a more effective way, especially, using this and kind of your above and beyond work specifically?
I would say that this in particular is going to set the groundwork, like actually creating a custom report for HOVRS. It's kind of setting the example for the use of other assessment tools to create room for growth in teaching practices or home visiting practices. So one of the other things that we created is also an additional customized data form, which essentially is an entire data form that houses the whole practice-based coaching cycle. So it's like all in one centralized location. And so it's not like scattered throughout like different platforms and like Google Drive and Child Plus and the notes feature and the Microsoft suite. And so it's really easy for us to kind of go in and like see what is going on a broad strokes level, to see what's happening with our coachees, what kind of goals are being set, what kinds of goals are not being completed, what are the barriers that we're seeing in terms of the system and process as a whole, not just like, okay, you know, why are the home visitors or the family child care providers struggling in this one particular area? Like, my job is to look at all of those different data pieces to ensure that the whole system is kind of running most effectively, but also with the most intention behind it. And that's, I think, what's really cool about partnering with TORSH Talent is that it's really helped me to better understand the quality improvement cycle as a whole, and to kind of build our program year around how we're kind of intentionally collecting those data pieces, like home visiting goals, teaching practice goals, what types of workshops are we creating to bolster up what's happening with our coaching program. There's just so much juiciness that comes from this platform. And I think seeing this rating scale, seeing this assessment tool come to life gives me like the inspiration and like the vision to know that like there's so much more to do and places to go using a platform like this, and to really organize ourselves around what are we really doing to center the relationships around our coach and our coachee, and to really pour in to our family child care providers and our home visitors in a very like targeted way, and not just because the feds want to see the data. Like, we know that data is just one part of the story, but it, you know, it's really more about the relationships that we're building. And I think especially in some of the things that we're seeing in the early childhood field and the industry as a whole, with like the turnover, the burnout, the high levels of attrition, creating programs like this with intention, with like holding the relationship at the center of it, I think is really important in terms of how we're building and looking at professional development as a whole, to really not just like focus in on the goals and the numbers and the data, but to really say like, hey, what do you really want to do with your career? How do you want to professionalize yourselves? What kind of growth edges do you think you have? And then using TORSH Talent, like leveraging all the features and the components of TORSH Talent to integrate into our like professionalizing and training and technical assistance processes.
I love it. Yeah. And it really is. I think this is a great story about how growing, if we ever have a story time one day to tell a little bit more about our founder and what he was thinking when he started Torsh, it really is like, if we can train and coach and grow better teachers, that basically waterfalls down and affects kids on such a meaningful scale. Like, if you can have strong professional development and coaching, it impacts students in a way that we just can't even imagine. So it's just interesting to see all of this work and know how much of an impact that is making to trickle down.
Yeah, and just to add to that, I think in getting more clear on what we were looking for in terms of using TORSH Talent purely for coaching, it's become so much more than that. And now that I've worked with my leadership team to kind of re-envision and like re-understand what we're doing from like a professional development level, what I'd also like to do with data like this, with the HOVRS assessment data, I want to kind of like, I don't know what the word is, but I want to cross-reference this data with our school readiness assessment data to see like, okay, if this home visitor and their client caseload is scoring in this particular way in their home visiting practices, how does that then impact how the child and the family are actually learning? Are the children and the families also achieving and accomplishing their developmental goals, and then how do those two like data sets kind of overlap, if they do or not. I like my sense is yes, but it would be really cool to kind of have the numbers to back up what we already know to be true, which is exactly what you said, Jamie, that when
Mhm.
you have high quality educators, folks that bring joy and fun and um, just like a lifelong love for learning, hands-on thing, like all these things that we know to be true about play and learning for young children, then how does that impact how the children are learning and
Mhm.
what they're learning and whether or not they are going to have the skills that they need to move on to higher levels of school.
Nice. Well, and I also wanted to touch a little bit on the new center opening and all of this work that you're doing. And you kind of mentioned earlier staffing. So you have, regular staffing that's ongoing and bringing on new staff for attrition, but then you're also opening a new center. So how are you preparing, or do you have plans to onboard and train the new staff using TORSH to make sure that it's consistent and quality in your coaching model?
Um, the short answer is yes, but I think because the center is still um it's kind of like this nebulous thing for me right now because there's so much other stuff going on that I'm like, oh, now we're opening a center. Yay, it's exciting. And also like that's going to be a lot of work. But I do think that there's in terms of using Torch Talent, like there's so many different like I already see so much of the opportunity there to use it beyond like coaching. So for example, we have, if there's any Head Start folks on this call, we have um our ERSI team, and they are really involved in like the intake process for our new clients and just enrolling new families into our program, just as a summarized viewpoint. And so one of the things that has recently happened is we're wanting to like um, have a window into what does that virtual intake process look like and how can we improve our practices around that. And so even though I was just looking at this platform to be used for education staff for that coach and coachee kind of relationship, I do think that you can use the video feature, like recording yourself doing anything virtually or even live and uploading it and sharing it with a supervisor or sharing it with a coach, and really kind of breaking down bit by bit, like, where are your strengths in this process? um, what did you do really well? What was a huge success in this intake process or anything? Um, and then where do you see your growth edges? Where are some areas where maybe there's some gaps that maybe the next time you do an intake, how can you improve? And really using the time-stamped um, feedback feature, or just using the video as a tool itself to like watch it back and say like, what are your thoughts? Like, let's reflect on this. I think, um, when you go through a teaching prep program, like at a bachelor's or a master's level, there are some courses that require you to record yourself so that you can get feedback from maybe your practicum supervisor or your field work supervisor. And then that's it. And then it's like, and then we never record ourselves ever again. And and I think that in this field, especially, it's so important to like, when you're doing this really hard work with children and families, sometimes we just miss the boat on some things, or maybe we had an off day, or maybe, we're really struggling with X, Y, and Z. And so the video piece, I think, can be such a useful tool in being able to like watch ourselves back. And it can be a little intimidating at first, but it's like we have the evidence in real time. We have the thing that was done in real time. And so let's use that as a tool, as like a mechanism to steer us towards higher quality and like better outcomes, and frankly, just more fun. Let's just have more fun.
Yeah.
Let's bring
Yeah,
the joy back into our work, you know?
I flashbacks to my college days where I recorded videos and sent them into the ether.
Yep.
And you just get like sometimes you would just get a score and not any good feedback or like
Yeah.
two-way conversation. Oh,
Yeah.
it's so stressful.
Yes.
Uh
So we're trying to move away from that. And I think
yeah.
Torch Talent gives you like, there's just so many ways to look at like a platform like this. And I think it does take some of the intimidation away because it creates the opportunity for a conversation, for
Yeah.
that like reciprocity to come out. So
Mhm.
yeah.
Well, okay, so you've been leading this initiative for some time now. What has been the most rewarding part of integrating Torch into your coaching model?
I mean, so many things. Um, honestly, I think it's this like digitizing the HOVRS assessment that has been in the making for so long, just to actually roll out and like implement the tool itself. But then as my home-based director was talking about this, I'm like, we got to put this in Torch. Like, we got to digitize this. Like, we're not doing this paper mumbo jumbo anymore. And it just feels like such a huge accomplishment because like literally this has been years in the making. And to see that report and to see the numbers and to hear the stories that are coming from the home visitors about what kind of strategies they're using to even get their families comfortable to be on camera themselves, and to really like see how reflective the home visitors are being with their practices and how much they're eager to like grow and improve. Um, I just feel like this sounds really cheesy, but I just feel like the sky is the limit. Like seeing this come to fruition and then having it be full circle, like implementing it, seeing the data come in, then using the data to take action. Um, it feels like a huge accomplishment for us.
Yeah. Well, you were already talking about doing a whole research project after it. You were going to become, you're like, "Oh, we could do this, we could do this." So,
And
yeah.
I always joke too that like my background is in the Reggio Emilia approach. And so that's a little bit more like hippy dippy trippy, loosey goosey. Like we're not really like data friendly. And so I get into the Head Start world, and now apparently like I'm the data friendly guru, and I'm like, who would have thunk, you know? But I guess I just like to nerd out on numbers. But I also like I said, there's power in the numbers, but there's also power in the narrative and the stories behind the numbers. And I never want to lose sight of that too. But I think that working with Torch Talent really allows you to marry the two in a really targeted and intentional way. So yeah, I'm excited.
Yeah. So, given all of your experience with coaching, you made it through, you made it through 2020. You've been in the trenches. You've created this robust system. Everything's going well. Anyone that might be considering using a platform like Torch, kind of bringing everything together. We've had these ideas for a while of bringing our coaching program together, doing our coaching cycles in a measurable way. What advice would you give them based on your experience? Maybe a like, when you're getting started, think about this.
Um, okay, I have two pieces of advice. Number one, be patient and have grace for yourself. When I went into this process, I was like, oh, great, here's a company and a platform that's going to do it all. And they're going to help with onboarding, and they're going to help with this, and they're going to help with that. And it's like, I still also had to have a plan and like had to help drive the plan, going back to that GPS analogy. And I think I was naive. I mean, I was literally fresh on the job for like 5 months. And um, I if I had to go back and do it all over again, I would have like co-created a better plan, but then also have the patience and the grace to know that like sometimes the plans don't work out how you want them to. And so I really wanted this to all be rolled out within like 6 months, like tied up with a nice pretty bow, and boom, we're doing it. And here we are 2.5 years later, and we're still learning, we're still growing. I think we finally like mastered it to a certain extent, but I've learned a lot in the process, and definitely like patience and grace is top. And also recognize that anytime you introduce a new system, a new process, a new tool, especially when it involves technology, it's going to take time. As I mean, we don't do this work in a vacuum. We do it in a team, and not everybody is going to be on the same page, and that's okay. But we have to be prepared to like meet those folks where they are, and bring them along for the ride. And to do something really well, it takes time. And I wish 4 years ago somebody would have like reminded me of that. But I was bright-eyed and bushy-tailed and like ready to go. And so now I'm a little less naive, a little more grounded in reality. And yeah, I mean, it's gonna take it'll take at least another year to even like figure out what our systems are for this center. So each time you roll out a new feature or you create a new data form, there's a huge learning curve. And so to have that patience and that grace, I think that's key for sure.
Wonderful. Well, thank you so much for sharing your story with us and a little bit about your perspective and all of the work that you're doing. We do have some time for questions at the end here. If anybody has any questions for Monica or for me about Torsh, feel free to drop them in there, and Shelby, our awesome tech specialist, is going to help us out with that. I'm also we've got Monica's information here on the screen. Don't worry, you don't have to write all of that down, because if you are attending today, we will be sending this deck out and Monica's contact information in an email to you after the webinar. So you'll get the recording, you'll get this deck, you'll get all of her information. Monica, can you just let everybody know that I actually am posting this with your permission? They are welcome to reach out to you.
Yes. Yes, and yes. I love talking about this stuff. And so if anybody on the call is like looking to up level their TNTA processes, their coaching processes, like I would love to figure out a way to collaborate with you all as well, and figure out how to like integrate TORSH Talent into those processes. So I'm definitely here.
Yeah, it's nice to have that collaboration too. We talked, Monica and I, before this about when I opened a center during COVID, and same thing, it was like survival. We were building the plane, we were trying to figure out everything. And it would have been really nice to be able to talk to other people that were going through the same thing, and like, what are you doing? And so it's just nice that Monica is willing to share that information.
Yeah.
Shelby, I just want to check. I don't see any questions, but can you let me know if there are any? If not, you can always follow up afterwards as well with an email. We're happy to answer anything. If there are no questions, or if you want to save them and email us later, that's fine. If you are interested in learning how TORSH Talent can help your program or reach your goals, or you're interested in consolidating coaching tools, or building out using like a video-based platform, feel free to schedule a demo with us today. Again, I will be sending this recording and this deck out afterwards, so you don't have to scan the QR code right now if you don't want to. But if you scan that QR code, we'll take your information. You can choose on a calendar when the best date and time for you is to do a demo. And a member of our team will be happy to walk you through and show you a little bit more about the platform and what all we can offer you. All right. Well, if there are no other questions, I just want to take one more moment to thank Monica for her time today. Thank you so much, Monica, for joining us and sharing your success story. And everyone can look for their email inbox soon for a recording and follow-up information.
Thanks,
Awesome.
Jamie.
Thanks, everyone. Thanks for joining.
Thanks, everyone.